Welcome everybody to Discover Your Path interviews. I'm here today with Joette Dunnihoo, who graduated in 2015, got a degree in music education with a specialization in choral, and is now the choral director at Cascade Middle School. So welcome, Joette.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So the first question I have for you is, what is a typical day like as a choral director?
Yeah, so a typical day, we'll think pre-2020, a typical day is I typically get to my school, we start at 7:45, but we, like, teachers have to be there earlier, right? So I typically show up around 6:45 and spend my first, like, kind of 15, 20 minutes just getting my gears rolling. I'm a slow wake kind of person. So I'll do, like, some emails and all that kind of stuff. And then I do some, like, any last minute prep that I need for my classes. I have the pleasure of being a traveling teacher because our school is really, like, that's growing very quickly. So we have limited classrooms. So my first two class periods are drama, and I teach those in other classrooms. And then the second half of the day, I teach choir, which is what my degree is in. And for those, I have my own classroom that I stay in for the rest of the day. So for my first two classes, I'll go to that class, do my thing, teach my class, hang out with students, try to help them be better people, and then go to a new classroom, rinse and repeat. And then I have my planning period, which is where I just don't have students. I get to try and figure out what my game plan is for the future, or this is where for me as a choir teacher, I have a lot of logistics to deal with that maybe other teachers wouldn't have. So like things like I have to figure out how my students get uniforms for our performances. I have to figure out, we do a lot more field trips that I have to organize, and things like that. So I'll do a lot of that kind of stuff during that 1 hour planning block. And then after that, I go and I teach my choir classes. Somewhere in there, I get a 30-minute lunch. And yeah, so and then during those classes, specifically, I do a lot of, it's a lot of teacher-centered stuff just because that's the nature of how choir works. Whereas some classrooms, you get a lot more like independence, and it's like having students go off and do things. We do almost everything together. So it is pretty high intensity on my side, but it's super fun for me because I love being around my students and I love making music with them. So we do like some warm-ups. I teach them how to read music through some curriculum that I have. They're slow at first. It's middle school. They're reluctant to learn sometimes. But yeah, so it's kind of like trying to make learning a game is pretty much what I do throughout the whole day. Drama class, the same thing. It's a whole lot of like, well, let's play a game. Did you know that you were just acting? So that's how I view my job. It's a big game.
Okay, and the drama. So how did you end up teaching the drama classes?
Yeah, so I was a part-time teacher, actually. I only had 0.6 FTE, which was like 60% of full-time. And then, like I said, my school was just growing so fast. They needed more electives. And so they actually asked me if I could go and get endorsed in drama so that way I could teach that class. So I did. I started teaching the class and got endorsed actually about halfway through the school year because that's how long it took me to study and get an appointment to do the testing and everything. So, but yeah, and I got my endorsement about halfway through the school year, right after I had learned how to teach drama. So it's been fun. I really enjoy it. I didn't anticipate enjoying it, but I do.
Wow. All right. Cool. Cool. Okay. So my next question is, how did you actually land the job that you have now?
Yeah. So I kind of took a little bit of a circuitous route. So my first job was actually at an elementary school in my same district. So I never wanted to teach elementary school, but there are far more elementary jobs than there are middle school and high school jobs, because just the way for music specifically, there's more buildings. So like my district has 14 elementary schools and only 4 middle schools and 3 high schools. So that means there's 7 jobs at the older level, but 14 at the lower level. So I kind of used that as my stepping stone. That's what they're called. Okay. Yeah. So I used that as my stepping stone to get to the job that I actually wanted, which was middle school. So I taught there for 1 year and kind of just kept my ear to the ground and was listening for what kind of openings were coming up for middle school. And this particular job, it used to be, it was like a 0.5 at 2 separate schools that one person taught, but they bumped up the FTE to 0.6. So it was too much for one person. So I kind of stepped into that and took that job. It was actually probably like one of the kind of jobs that if fewer people would have gone for it because it's not full time. So, but now I am full time, so I was able to kind of work up to that, and that was kind of my goal. I went into it with more of a long-term mindset of I'm going to build it to be what I want it to be instead of maybe I'm not going to walk in and say exactly what I want right now. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. The next question I have is about substitute teaching. So you told me earlier that you have done some substitute teaching as well. So tell us what that was like.
Yeah, so substitute teaching was an interesting adventure. I did it for about 3 months, and actually I did it throughout my first year of teaching as well because my schedule was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So my Tuesdays and Thursdays were open. So I did some substitute teaching on those days as well. And yeah, it's interesting. It takes a very special person to do it long term because you have to be very resilient. A lot of students, I'm sure a lot of us remember when we were younger, they like to play some games and that kind of stuff. So I always tried to go in and be like the cool teacher and be like, hey guys, whoa, I know you're going to try and play games. That's fine. But just know that I could be super nice if you were just nice to me first. And so I kind of just try to like win them over right away. And it usually works. The reality is that most kids don't actually want other people to fail. They're either trying to get out of doing work or they're uncomfortable because it's something that they don't know. And so they're kind of finding other ways to release that energy. So it's tough, but it's definitely worth it because the kids, they really need that extra support from those teachers.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Next question is, what strengths and skills do you think are important for being successful as a music teacher?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, but oddly, not many of them, in my opinion, are actually directly related to music. There are things that I think are just kind of like life skills. So obviously, I think that passion is super important. If you don't care enough about your subject and about what you're teaching, the reality is that it's not going to go many places. So like I said, I came in when it was only a 0.6, and it was a 0.6 because somebody had taken it from a 0.5 and built it and made it better. And so as a music teacher, you have to be willing to put in that work because they're not just going to hand you extra classes or extra students. You have to be the one who goes out and says, hey, come join my group, come be a part of my program. And you have to be the one who does a lot of the building. So passion is super important, and then resilience. So there's going to be a ton of roadblocks along the way. And it's not because people don't like music, and it's not because people don't want kids to have opportunities. It's just because the harsh reality is that money is a thing. and it can be kind of challenging to get the resources that are needed to make a real quality group or really quality program. And you have to be able to basically kind of push past some of those obstacles and be willing to be shot down sometimes and look for other avenues to overcome that kind of stuff. And then also with resilience, just like on an emotional level, there's just a lot of things that you see as a teacher that are just kind of heartbreaking, like some things that are broken in our system, that are broken in our kids' lives and things like that. And so just making sure that you have like the resiliency, but also the self-care to kind of push through that kind of stuff and like be as positive and uplifting to those kids as you can. It's super important. Yeah. Long term, you'll get burnt out if you don't have those things.
Do you have to be able to sing good?
You know, it would be nice. It's a good skill.
Because I know you sing well.
I worked very hard at it, that's for sure. Honestly, I think sometimes, like, of course, like a knowledge of your content is super, super important. That's true. I've met some teachers, like there's actually a teacher in my district who he majored in guitar and he teaches choir. He's taught choir for 30 years. and he's got a really healthy program, lots of numbers in his groups. So singing isn't necessarily something he's bad at, but it wasn't his first thing either. So I think those other things, those more like transferable skills, are going to be more valuable long-term as a teacher, or especially music teacher.
What advice do you have for students who are thinking about becoming a teacher, more specifically a music teacher?
I would say get to know yourself really well. You have to know what are the things that get under your skin, because students are going to find them, and they're going to mess with them. They're going to see what they can get away with. And that's just part of growing up, right? So knowing yourself, but then also then you know how to react. Like, you're like, okay, well, I know that this is happening because in me there's this thing, and so now I can control that situation a little bit more healthily than I would if I was just initially reacting. So yeah, so definitely knowing yourself, and then also with knowing yourself, you know how much you can handle, right? So there's like that idea that, you know, how much can you put on your plate? Well, everybody's plate is a different size. So knowing the size of your plate is really important, because there's a ton of opportunities. And like I said, as a music teacher, you have to fight for your program, maybe not in an aggressive way, but you do have to build it and make it yourself. And you can make, you know, you can pile as much as you want onto your plate, but you have to know basically how much can you truly handle, because that's how you get that quick burnout, is not setting those boundaries for yourself.
That's great advice. All right, well, those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for being with us today. I think students will learn a lot from this.
Good. Yay, I'm glad.